So who had this in their 2021 bingo card? Pitbull, Justin Marks, and Team Trackhouse have just purchased Chip Ganassi Racing's NASCAR team. Wow. So when I heard that there was going to be a big Team Trackhouse press release, and it was like going to be a major announcement streamed on NASCAR.com, I was just kind of like, okay, I've heard this dog and pony show before. I feel like every time there's like a major announcement, I mean, Chip himself made a major announcement this year where he was like, we got a manufacturer we're going to bring into our team, and everybody was like, whoa, what's this all about? Turned out it was just Hummer stickers on his Extreme E car. So, you know, when I hear this stuff, sometimes I go, okay, is this actually going to be a major announcement? I guess wrong today. And that's why I rushed back here to the studio. I was actually out of the house. I looked at Twitter, and people were like, hey, David, so Ganassi's NASCAR team just got bought. And I was like, oh, yeah, that's significant. So the big reason I think this has happened is because of the charter system. And what happened in the last couple of weeks, or what is happening clearly right now in the last couple of weeks, is that the teams that want to be there in 2022 are positioning themselves to do so through buying charters. And the market value of a charter right now is absolutely skyrocketing. It is through the roof. Colleague Racing, you may have already seen this, bought 2 charters for $10 million each recently. And this is a much more significant purchase for Team Trackhouse. Now, they get both of Chip Ganassi's charters, which, given market value, that's $20 million right there. And they're getting all of his NASCAR equipment, his shop, and I think according to Chip, their employees. So this is a significant purchase. I can't even imagine how much they paid for this. And it certainly shows that I think Trackhouse is very, very, very much committed to the Cup side of things. But it also raises a lot of questions. One of the first questions that I have, and it's one that I've kind of seen coming for a while. Again, it's not going to be confirmed until we see how many cars actually show up to Daytona. But my thought is, with the charter system, especially how valuable those charters are right now, and with the new cars coming, with the next gen cars, and those cars being totally brand new, you have to buy all new equipment to run those race cars, essentially, that we are going to see a reduction in grid size. I mean, even if you look at this, essentially, this would be a reduction of 1 car from the series. I know that Trackhouse had a charter for this year, but I think for some reason their charter has gone away. I think it was the JTG charter, I think, the second one. And I think JTG is taking it back, or they might have sold it off to like Colleague or something. But the point being, I think we're going to see a reduction in field. I think we're pretty much just going to see the charter teams, maybe 1 or 2 open cars, especially at Daytona, where I think something like a Rick Ware, if they sell off their charters, and by the way, they should if they haven't already, you might see a couple of those cars just to get the prize money. We might see a full field, which would be 40, but I think that would be a little bit doubtful at this point, especially just from the fact that you have to get all these new cars to the teams, they have to assemble them, and they have to have them in Daytona. Now, there's been a couple of talks about teams expanding. Obviously, this is an expansion for Trackhouse, but not an expansion for the field, if that makes sense. So they're going to 2 cars. There's been talk of 2311 going to as many as 3 cars, and certainly I think that would be something important for Toyota to do with the next gen cars and developing those cars going forward. But for Chip Ganassi, it's very interesting. I want to read you this quote first, which comes from Ganassi himself, which says, "My NASCAR team was not for sale. Justin simply came to me with a great offer and an even better vision. As everyone knows, I care deeply for my employees, so selling to someone like Justin, who is part of the CGR family, made the reality of selling much easier." So Justin Marks obviously raced for Ganassi. I think won for him at least once on the Xfinity side of things. And it's interesting that Chip was not considering selling, which again kind of goes back to my point is Marks brought a significant amount of money. And Chip said, all right, bet. And so this has broader motorsports implications than just NASCAR. This frees up I'm sure this frees up a tremendous amount of resources on Chip Ganassi Racing side. So things like an LMDH program, which is heavily rumored. In fact, I know pretty darn well that they have one in development, a program. I don't know exactly what manufacturer they're with. I think the smart money would be on Cadillac or Corvette or some sort of a GM product, considering that Chevy is paying for them to be in DPI right now. But certainly I think that's a definite step that Chip Ganassi Racing could take. And now I'm starting to think that things like, hey, Jimmy Johnson, he's been warming up to the ovals. A fifth IndyCar program to run Jimmy the whole season, and then possibly Tony Kanaan at selected races to fulfill his contract. That seems more likely now that there is this cash on hand to hire more people and to do things like that, accomplish projects like that. So this is a very exciting possibility for Chip, for NASCAR, for everybody involved. It does seem like a good deal. Team Trackhouse, that's another thing, because so obviously I think they're going to stick with Suarez. I feel like that's obvious. So you're going to have one car there, but what about the second car? Because you have two drivers there. You have Kurt Busch, who has already said, I'm not done. I want to keep racing in NASCAR, and he's higher in the points right now than his teammate, who would be the other driver under discussion for that, Ross Chastain. My question would be, who do you go with if you're Justin Marks? Do you go with the proven talent, which is Kurt Busch? Do you go with the potentially development into a truly great NASCAR driver, which is Ross Chastain, which I think he does have that potential? Or do you go completely outside and try to get a completely different driver into that Trackhouse organization? Now that they have two charters, they have a guaranteed spot in the field for both cars. You have a lot of options, and they're clearly not unwilling to spend money as this truck. I mean, again, I don't know a number. I haven't really asked about a number, but again, considering that charters are essentially worth $10 million each, just think how much the equipment is worth. And the buildings. Oh my God, I can't even. So there's a lot of possibilities out there for Trackhouse. They clearly have the capital to make all these investments, which will raise the profile of their team. Remember, everybody essentially is starting with a blank sheet of paper in NASCAR next year. So a team like Trackhouse, which in reality, I would personally say that between the two new teams that were really coming in with a decent budget, 2311 and Trackhouse, I think it's very clear which team has performed better. It's Trackhouse. So looking at both of those teams kind of coming in on somewhat equal footing, even though I would probably say in some ways 2311 probably had a better starting point. Money-wise, they had a ton of sponsorship right out of the gate. They had the JGR equipment, which of course I think came from Levine Family Racing, but whatever. And they had a driver who I think, well, I don't know. I'd probably say Bubba and Suarez kind of came in to this year on equal footing. I know Suarez obviously won a championship, but in terms of their Cup success, they kind of came in fairly even. But I would say that I think going into next year, I would say advantage Trackhouse. They seem to be, and I think, and again, they were so impressive at Daytona too. Just right out of the box, they were fast. They got caught up in the big wreck, and they've been consistently fast. I mean, Suarez probably should have won the Bristol Dirt Race if you think about it. So that's more than you can say for the other new team, 2311. So I think I'm not totally knocking down 2311, but I think people had a lot more expectations for that team and a lot less expectations for Trackhouse, and yet the opposite is true when you actually when the rubber meets the road. So next year is going to be quite interesting from that perspective. And in fact, looking at the rest of the NASCAR field, obviously we've heard about the Brad Keselowski rumors, which I think are way more than rumors at this point, that he's headed over to Roush. What does that do? Does Roush, I would assume that Roush won't do 3 cars, so I would assume that one of the drivers from Roush is going to go away. Does Jack kick out Newman, or does he kick out Chris Buescher? So that's going to be... The NASCAR silly season never fails to disappoint. I didn't quite expect it to be this silly this early on. And yeah, it's going to be weird to not have Ganassi in NASCAR anymore. That is going to be really weird. But I think for us open wheel sports car fans, it's going to be good because Chip's going to have a lot of moolah to play around with. And for the NASCAR fans, I think you're going to have a much more committed team owner in Justin Marks than you would have in Chip Ganassi. I'm not saying that Chip Ganassi wasn't committed, but Justin Marks clearly wants to be in Cup, and that's his number one focus. Chip obviously has his fingers in all of these different pots and pans, so you're going to see a very focused new life Trackhouse with the former Ganassi and former Earnhardt equipment. Think about that for a second. So thank you guys so much for watching. This has been David Land on YouTube. Subscribe for more motorsport content, and I will see you in the next video.